Hello. Today we will be looking at the AI ethics of safety, and we will start with this very famous accident involving a Tesla motor car. We won't be looking too carefully at it. Uh, to set the stage, what's going on is the Tesla is driving in this lane. More or less, you are in this picture. You are looking out the front window as you would be if you were driving the car. You see um, the on the left side. I'm trying to think of what is that word for the horror movie when there's some foreshadowing of a terrible event, some ominous. There's an ominous white truck there on the left side, waiting to pull out onto the freeway. And in fact, what this truck is going to do, it wants to go the other way. It wants to go toward our rear in the opposite direction of us. So it's going to pull across the highway in front, keep going to the other side where it will turn right. So this truck, the white truck you see on the slide exiting the gas station, is just about to pull across the front of the highway. That's what happens in this car accident. You can perhaps already begin to think or imagine what the result of that is going to be. Here is the result. You can see that the truck pulled across the highway in front here. The Tesla car was in autopilot, driven without the human paying attention, and the human in this case was not paying attention. The human was playing with his phone or something else, and the Tesla, seeing this truck in front of it, mistook or that it misclassified. That's the artificial intelligence term for how an artificial intelligence works to read or understand the road. It classifies things, so it sees something in front of it, and then it marks it as a stop sign or a stoplight or a pedestrian, etc. And then once that information is inputted into the artificial intelligence, well, that's one. And first, there is the artificial intelligence in the camera of the car that reads and classifies the things it sees. So it reads and sees a stoplight, or reads and sees a stop sign, or reads and sees a pedestrian, or reads and sees a truck. Or in this case, it appears that from what I understand, it appears that the Tesla misclassified this big white truck as a cloud. So when the truck pulled right in front of the Tesla, what the Tesla saw was just a cloud in the sky, as you see here. And you can understand how a computer could make that mistake, right? That there is this big, vaguely white with darker and lighter patches shape in front of it. It doesn't look like, if that truck is right in front of you like that, it doesn't look like a truck normally looks. It doesn't look like a car. It doesn't look like an airplane, right? What it looks most like, perhaps, is a cloud. And remember, that's the way that artificial intelligence works. That's the way it classifies. There is no such thing as certainty in artificial intelligence. Instead, what it does is it looks at, in this case, it is classifying images, looks at images, and it attaches a probability as to what that image will be. So it could be, in one extreme case, it could say it's 50% probability it's a cloud, 50% probability it's a truck. But usually, the way, and I don't want to get too technical here, but the reason that artificial intelligence can produce knowledge efficiently and rapidly at scale is because it rounds off the corners. When it sees a probability, let's say it's 55% cloud, 45% truck, what it tends to do is it tends to jam everything to one extreme or the other. Right? So artificial intelligence does not mess around too much with nuances. What it does is it says it's either this or that, pushes it to that direction, attaches a high probability, in essence, in the end, that's not quite right, is it? It attaches a high probability, it attaches a probability at the start. And then in order to function, it attaches a high probability at the end and says, let's just act on it. And it attaches the high probability by forcing all of these many factors, right? So it goes beyond, it's not just a cloud or the truck or that kind of thing. There are all kinds of things that the AI camera is seeing. And each one of these things, it forces it to be finally either a stop sign or a stop sign here and a pedestrian there and a truck here, right? The machine simply can't work if it's caught in doubt at every step. Well, there's some chance this is a truck, some chance it's a cloud, there's some chance this is a stop sign, there's some chance it's a pedestrian. That won't work, right? So it starts out with a probability, but then pushes it to one extreme or the other, and then takes action on that probability. So what happened here? The Tesla came down the road, saw this truck, probably attached. Maybe the machine was in doubt at the start. It could be a cloud, it could be a truck, who knows? But the machine has to decide. Right? So it jams it out to the extreme and says, look, this is a cloud. And then carries on as though it really is a cloud. So what happened? Well, you can see here where I've circled in yellow, what happened is the car impacted the truck. And what is most astonishing about this is the car just kept going. It never even slowed down. Why would it? Because as far as the car was concerned, what it saw was a cloud or mist, right? Something you just drive right through on a road normally. So the car did not even slow down, and it sheared off the top of the car. And the bottom of the car, as I say, it just kept going down the road. As far as the car was concerned, everything was fine. Now, a little while later, it started to malfunction and went off the road. But at least initially, it just kept going. So this is a real safety, AI safety concern, right? The machine, in order to function, must take ambiguous cases like clouds and trucks, and has to make a decision one way or the other, and then go as though that is true. Human being might sort of slow down and look more carefully and so on. Of course, a human being would see this as a truck, but in dangerous situations, human beings sort of slow down. We know intuitively let's take another look at this. Let's think about it a little bit further. Let's put our foot on the brakes, that kind of thing. Well, I mean, if a car on autopilot did that every time it faced uncertainty, it would be slowing down constantly. I mean, it just can't work. For the machine to work, it must take those middle ground probabilities and jam them out to one extreme or the other. And say either, well, I'm just going to say this is a cloud or this is a truck. And the result is this giant safety risk where you have a case, something that could plausibly be a cloud like this, gets understood as a cloud. The car doesn't even slow down, just jams right through it, taking off ultimately the top of the car. And I will let you use your imagination insofar as what happened to the driver. How did Tesla respond to this? Tesla responded intelligently and in a reasonable way. They said, look, this is the first known fatality in just over 130 million miles where autopilot in Tesla was activated. So this is way back from 2016. So it's 8 years ago now. That's a long time ago. I'm not sure what the statistics are since then, but at the time, and I believe the people accepted that these statistics were in essence correct. So this is the first known fatality in just over 130 million miles where autopilot was activated. In the US, there is a fatality for every 94 million miles. Worldwide, there's a fatality approximately every 60 million miles. Okay, so what is Tesla saying? Tesla is saying, look, of course, this is a tragic loss, of course it is. But the car, nevertheless, is safe because 130 versus 94. I mean, if you have to travel, in other words, if you have to travel and you have to either sit in the back of a car with the autopilot or sit in the back of a car with a human driver, just statistically, you are more likely to get to your destination if there's no one in the front seat. You're more likely to get to your destination, according to this, if the autopilot is on instead of a human. Now, the problem is none of that changes the reality that you have this threat hanging over you, that at any moment the car could go off the rails. At any moment, the car, in its need to jam probabilities to one extreme or the other, could end up with this zany accident, mortal, lethal accident, which any human would have avoided easily. It was a sunny day. There was no rain, no wind. There was no other problem besides the fact this giant white truck with the side like this had no paint on it. It looked to a machine like a cloud. And you can see how it could make that mistake. So what I am saying is, it seems to me that there are two questions here about safety in the area of artificial intelligence. One is about the value of safety, or what it means to us and how it can be described. And I think, at least from this accident, it seems like safety is something which has to do with our expectations. I think anyone who sees that Tesla accident is horrified at the thought that if they're in the seat of a Tesla car and it's driving, that at any moment, even the most innocent and normal driving conditions, right, 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon with sun, no rain, should be perfect driving conditions. At any moment, the machine may make a decision which is would never even cross the mind of a human to make, and the results can be horrifying, lethal, mortal, and almost like a horror movie kind of end. So there's this question about safety as going beyond simply the statistics, right? It's one death for every 94 million or 130 million or miles and so on. But there's also a sense that at any moment at all, you could be victim of an AI, artificial intelligence, error in reasoning. So safety is not just, it seems to me, if you're in a Tesla, it's not just the number of people who die here or there. It's also the sensation you have when you're riding in it. Certainly, I have that. I've ridden in a Tesla and I've put it on autopilot, but I'm aware of this accident. And is it in my mind? Yes, it's in my mind. Maybe some people can put it out of their mind. I'm not so sure, but it's certainly in my mind. So there's this area of safety, which is not just how many people die or don't die. And there's also the kind of psychological anxiety that goes along with riding in a driverless car. So I think that's something about how safety can be described and the value of safety. On the one hand, of course, part of what safety is and part of the value of safety is just your life, of course. But it's not only that. And there's also this sense of anxiety or this feeling that with an autopilot AI driver, you are never safe. I mean, I feel like when I'm driving down the road with a human being on a Sunday and it's sunny and it's 3 o'clock, I feel pretty safe. There's not a lot of traffic. I'm fairly confident nothing is going to go wrong. You just don't have that feeling, or it seems like you shouldn't have that feeling with a car on autopilot. All right. So all that on one side. On the other hand, when it comes to measuring safety, Tesla is right. It's hard to refute simple and true numbers in terms of what happens at the end of the day if you have two people driving from Boston to New York, and one person is driving him or herself, and the other person is in an autopilot car. Now, according to these numbers, the person in the autopilot car is more likely to arrive safely. If that's true, I'm not sure if these numbers are true, but let's just assume they are. If that's true, then one, it seems hard to object to that as a measure. I mean, that just seems like the basic measure, really. And two, if even if you have this other concern about feeling that at any moment you might be struck by lightning and some crazy thing happens. Isn't that sort of almost a kind of human weakness? I think that part of what Tesla is sort of saying implicitly here is, as rational beings, we should be able to get past the fear of horrific accidents and just think in terms of the numbers. I mean, what matters at the end? What matters at the end, in some sense, is true. That's what you can count. That's what you can see. What matters in the end is getting there safely. And if the Tesla gets you there more safely, then isn't that the way we should measure safety, not in terms of these psychological concerns? And doesn't that also mean that the Tesla is safer? Again, there are these psychological worries you have, but how do you measure those? What are the units? How do you quantify them? It's a pretty powerful argument that Tesla makes. They say, look, here's a way to measure safety. It makes sense. It's reasonable. And by that measure, clearly the Tesla is safer than other cars. So I think that's one way of looking at the crux of the kind of discussions that surround safety and artificial intelligence. It's what does safety mean? How do we measure it? And so on. And only after that, only after we come to some conclusion about those things, can we go on to then ask the fundamental question, which is, well, is the Tesla safe or not? When it's on autopilot. The case that the company makes is quite powerful. However, as I say, to wrap this up, that image is also quite powerful. So we will think about that. So I always start these by saying, well, we will think about these AI principles or values in terms of the human experience. And then we move on to think of the theoretical definition. So that's the human experience. The theoretical definition, we will ask, we have this habit of asking ChatGPT, so we'll see what it says. Please define safety in AI ethics in less than, what do we say, 51 words. So let's see what it says. Safety in AI ethics refers to ensuring that artificial intelligence systems operate reliably and without causing harm to humans or the environment, while also respecting privacy, security, and ethical standards in their design, development, and deployment. Good start, bad end. So one thing we have been really trying to do in this seminar is say that, look, safety is one thing. Privacy, let's say, I'm not sure what the other stuff is, but privacy is something else. Safety does not mean that you get there safely plus you have privacy. No, and those are two completely different things. It's like airplanes and cars, or like airplanes and televisions. And you have one or don't have, and you have one and you may have the other, or you may not have the other. But there's no necessary inclusion of the idea of privacy within safety. So one thing I don't like about ChatGPT is that it always confuses these values. It starts talking about safety, then it ends up talking about privacy, and it ends up talking about fairness and so on. That the goal, what we're trying to do, is learn about each of these values discreetly, what it means in itself, what is its nature, how is it to be that one thing. So we're looking at safety not in terms of privacy or fairness, but in terms of safety itself. So I don't like that second part where the ChatGPT starts talking about other stuff like design development. No, it's not that. What we're talking about is safety, just safety. The first part is okay, refers to ensuring that AI systems operate reliably and without causing harm to humans. That sounds pretty good, right? I don't think safety is I think that safety is probably one of the easier ones to define. Here's a ChatGPT vision of safety. I looked at this before starting today for a little bit, tried to make some sense of it. Not really anything. Here's the practical definition. AI safeguarded against causing harms, even when confronted with unexpected changes, anomalies, and perturbations. Another way of saying that is that AI is robust and resilient. Those are somewhat technical terms. in general, the idea of safety is that the AI doesn't cause harm on one side, and it doesn't cause harm in two different kinds of contexts. It doesn't cause harm within the context of the sorts of environment and things that it's been trained on and that it knows what to expect. So in the case of a driverless car, it doesn't cause harm when it goes down the street and sees a stop sign. It knows that's a stop sign and stops. That's one side. The other side, perhaps the more interesting side, is this idea that there are perturbations or unexpected changes or anomalies. And that's what's being captured in this idea of robust and resilient. How does the AI work when it is confronted with, let's say, an experience, something happens that is not tightly within the training data, which is not tightly within the kinds of automotive realities that it has practiced on? And that's what happened in the truck case, right? And the AI driverless car, millions and millions of hours of film had been used to train the, I'm not sure it's millions of millions, but quite a bit of images and films and pictures and all kinds of stuff had gone into training the AI to recognize trucks, to pull around and pass trucks and so on. But probably comparatively little training data had been accumulated for a truck pulling in front of you that looks like this, right? Most trucks have some writing on the side. Most trucks, of course, are going along with traffic, not crossing traffic in front of you. And so this was a kind of anomaly. It's not quite a perturbation, but it is outside of the normal experience that the car had been trained upon. So safety is first, how well it reacts to things that are within the confines of normal driving, like a stop sign. And then second, how well it reacts to things, how well it can bend its capacity to include and react in an appropriate way to visions like this truck, which do not fit into what it has most commonly been shown and trained upon. So those are the two sides of, when they talk about robust and resilient, they mean that second side of experience. And again, the two sides of experience are the ones that are expected, and the ones that are unexpected. And what safety does is it ensures that you are protected from harm in both those kinds of experiences. We're going to see that this idea of anomalies and perturbations later on, we are going to see that this is quite important. But for the moment, we have that tripartite idea of safety, protected from harm, works in familiar environments, and works in unfamiliar environments. Maybe you can cast that into your own language and with your own example for just a second. Okay, so what we are going to talk about now are threats to safety, two kinds of threats, which I think are important to distinguish, different ways of measuring safety, different ways of implementing safety, and we're going to end with a little bit of talk about some general theories of safety and how concerns about the safety of AI intersect with I'm not sure that it is a need, let's say, with the incentive for technical innovation and advance. How do we weigh making the AI work better, faster, stronger, in more areas of experience against the consequent safety risks that arise? The more AI you have, the more risks you have to human safety. How do we weigh those two things against each other? That's where we will conclude. But where we are going to start is in some sense that the sources of AI safety on the theoretical level. We've looked at it on the practical level when it thinks that a cloud is a truck. That's a big threat to safety. More theoretically, there are two kinds of ways that artificial intelligence can be unsafe. One of those ways is that the AI underperforms. That is, it works not well enough, or the AI is less than perfect. The other way, however, is that AI can also overperform. It can work too well. It can be more than perfect, right? So we can have AI which is not good enough, and we can have AI which is too good. And both of those two realities imply regions or realms of safety investigation. So the first, the underperforming idea of AI, confusing that truck with a cloud, that's clearly a problem that results from the artificial intelligence not working well enough. And the way we solve that problem is just with more training data. And what we do is we say, look, we're going to drive trucks across the street in front of cars, do that time after time, get footage or film to study for the software engineers so they can define the crucial elements of these trucks pulling in front of cars, and so the car can learn, no, that's a truck, not a cloud, and the car will know to slow down or stop instead of just keeping on going. Right. So the idea of the safety threat from artificial intelligence that underperforms leads in some sense to a fairly easy and immediate solution. Is that if the AI is not good enough, just make it better. And that's natural because that's what we're doing all the time anyway. And that's what you do if you're hired to work in the area of artificial intelligence, let's say in the area of driverless cars. Your job assignment on the first day is, well, it works pretty well, make it work better. So I think that's fairly straightforward. The other kind of safety threat is perhaps more interesting. It's a little bit counterintuitive. It's the idea that the AI could perform too well. It could overperform, like it's too perfect. And then this is a classic example from a philosopher named Nick Bostrom. This is from quite some time ago now, but it's timeless as the day it was written because it's clever and funny and good. What he says is, look, in essence, he's making the point that artificial intelligence, we have to worry not only that it's not working well enough, but also that it's working too well. And his example is a paperclip manufacturing facility. He says, look, let's imagine that we program an artificial intelligence to make paper clips, like we give it that as the highest order. Here you are, machine, make paper clips. Well, of course, a human being will make paper clips and in some normal way until the steel runs out, right? The human gets the steel into the factory and then pours it into the mold, to the heater, and they pour it into the mold, and that makes the paper clip. That's what the human will do, right? And then if there's no delivery of steel this week, the human will go on vacation or something. But an artificial intelligence, of course, doesn't think like that. If you just tell an artificial intelligence, look, make paper clips, and the artificial intelligence is overperforming, it's really good, then after a few weeks, when the steel delivery comes in and it pours the steel into the smelter or the heater or the furnace or whatever it is that melts down the steel and then pours it into the molds to make the paper clips. After a couple of weeks of that, everything is good. Then 1 week, the truck drivers have gone on strike, and so no steel arrives. But the artificial intelligence doesn't have any desire to go on a vacation, so it just looks for some other solution. And here we have to use a little bit of science fiction. But we imagine that the artificial intelligence taps into a driverless car and goes and somehow steals some, and talks to another robot and steals some steel from somewhere else and brings it to the smelter. And then that leads, and then the police come and they see this happening. And they try to stop the robot from stealing this steel from other places, but the robot doesn't see that as, the artificial intelligence doesn't see that as breaking the law. It just sees that it's trying to operate and achieve its imperative, which is to make paper clips. And so here again, we have to go for science fiction. So it devises some kind of laser weapon and shoots the police. And the way that the story goes is at the end of all this, this paperclip making artificial intelligence perfectly innocently, only trying to achieve its final directive, which is to make paperclips, right? It's not to destroy the world, not to end humanity, not to do any of that stuff. There's no machine, just as a quick note, there is no computer that wants to destroy humanity or that will ever want that or will ever do that in some direct way. But what he is saying is that indirectly, yeah, something like that could happen. Of course, the paperclip example is silly. It's a toy example, but it catches the essence of the risk that AI presents from working too well. That is, if the AI has a directive, a prime directive, which has not been thought out very well or hasn't been thought out to its ultimate consequences, like make paperclips, then yes, it's possible that in the service of that directive, it will cause all kind of harm elsewhere. Again, not because the AI is some evil thing, but just because it's doing what it has been programmed to do. So the idea would be here that, again, the paperclip making machine ends up, I don't remember the exact story, but it ends up devouring the earth and killing all humans. But yes, achieving its goal of making many, many paperclips, right? The entire world is converted into a giant set of paperclips. So that's the other side of this AI risk, this idea that it's not just that artificial intelligence presents a safety hazard because it doesn't perform well enough. It's that it can also create safety hazards because it performs too well. So those are the two general areas of artificial intelligence. And maybe you could just take a few minutes to think. The paperclip idea is just a toy example. Of course, that's not going to happen, or who knows, maybe it will. But there probably are other areas where you could imagine that an artificial intelligence is given a directive which makes perfect sense, but because it performs that directive too well, it causes harm to humans. Okay, so that was kind of a philosophical view of the kinds of threats that artificial intelligence can create. We've had a very human experience, like the Tesla driving into the truck. We've had the philosophical experience, too imperfect or too perfect. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how we measure real risks, safety risks out in the world, and how we try to at least begin to think about how we are going to, what risks we are willing to accept and what risks we do not want to accept. And one common way to begin thinking about this is just a simple confusion matrix of 4 quadrants where we talk about risks on 2 axes. One is the severity of the risk, and the other is the frequency of the risk. So a low severity risk is something like Netflix recommending for me a movie that I don't like. That might happen, but it really doesn't cause me too much harm. A high severity risk is the paperclip factory or an artificial intelligence that tells the Pentagon that a nuclear nuclear missiles have been launched against the United States, when in fact that has not happened, and that could trigger a nuclear war. That's obviously the highest severity risk. And then on the other side, there's the low and high frequency. So something like the Netflix, if your experience is like mine, it's true that the risk of Netflix recommending movies that I don't like is low in the sense that it doesn't cause me a lot of harm, but it is a very high frequency. I mean, Netflix seems to get it wrong for me all the time. So you have this case in Netflix in which it would be in the quadrant, at least in my experience, it would be in the quadrant where the kind of risk it presents it almost gets into the yellow area because on the one hand, it's true, the severity of the risk is very low, but the frequency is very high. And then similarly, you could have on the other side something like a the Tesla car, if it's true that it goes 130 million miles before creating a fatality, well, then I think we have to concede that at least within the kind of parameters that we've been accustomed to in the area of driving, that the risk in Tesla of being involved in a harmful situation when you allow the autopilot to control the vehicle, the risk is of low frequency, but as we've seen in the image, it's certainly high severity, right? So we have the high severity, low frequency risk, which is the Tesla. It's one yellow. We have the low severity. We have the low frequency, high severity risk, which is the Tesla. We have the low severity, high frequency risk, which is the Netflix. Then there's the high frequency, high severity risk. That would occur, for example, if we were to put artificial intelligence just in charge of all cars in New York City right now. That would be immediately high frequency and high severity. Anyone who has driven in New York City knows that there's no way, I guess this is a personal belief, but it's my personal belief that it will never happen that artificial intelligence will be able to drive in New York City. There are just too many anomalies all the time. Half the time you can barely even see the lines on the streets, which tell you where the lanes are. In fact, many times here where I live, many times drivers don't even pay attention to what side of the street they're supposed to go on. If on the oncoming lane there's space, there's no car coming, they just pull into that and make a left turn from the wrong lane, that sort of thing. And I have to admit, you kind of have to do that in New York, because if you don't, it's just true. If you don't break the law all the time in New York City when you're driving, you just won't go anywhere. And worse, if you don't break the law and no one else does, then traffic will just stop. It will just be one giant parking lot, because there's always so much construction going on here. And there's always a truck stopped and unpacking there. And then there's always a police car is pulled up over here. And some people are playing soccer in the street over there, and so on. And the only way to make a car work in New York City is just to break the law left and right. But that kind of thing is really hard for a Tesla to do. So if you were going to say, look, program the car to go in New York City, and then you were going to have it sort of be functional, it would have to do something besides just sit there and do nothing. Right? You would have to kind of tell the car, when in doubt, just go, right? Because that's what humans do. But of course, driverless cars, there would immediately be accidents everywhere. So high severity, high frequency would be if you put driverless Teslas in New York City. Low severity, low frequency would be something like, I'm trying to think of an AI that works really well. Well, maybe someday we can hope someday that Netflix really works well, and so it rarely makes mistakes. And when it does, it really doesn't matter. So anyway, the point is that there are these 4 zones that you can think of to distribute risk in artificial intelligence. And obviously the high frequency, high severity risk is the worst. But the question about the yellow areas, that's where the discussions would be most heated. When you have a high severity risk like nuclear war with low frequency, well, how low does it have to be, the frequency of error, for you to use artificial intelligence in the implementation of nuclear warheads? Or on the other side, when you have a low severity risk, like Netflix giving me a bad movie, I mean, is there a point where the frequency gets so high that overall the risk becomes sufficient to say, look, we should just stop using AI in these areas? That's where the discussions are. Obviously, if there's high severity and high frequency risk, we probably should not use artificial intelligence. And if it's low frequency and low severity, then there's no reason to not use artificial intelligence. So this is what I am trying to do here. I'm trying to say, okay, we have this idea of severity of risk and frequency of risk. I think that makes sense kind of intuitively. Then, if the risk is low frequency and low severity, and we should just use AI. It's high severity and high frequency, we should not use AI. Then there's these yellow areas where we have the debate. Can we do more than that? Can we do more than say there is this area of uncertainty? Can we actually create a kind of algorithm, or not a kind of a algorithm, which tells us when we should and should not use the artificial intelligence? For example, something like the Tesla autopilot, we might say, look, first we have to include in this algorithm the severity of the autopilot harms when there is an accident. Let's say for every, I'm just making these numbers up, let's just say for every 100 million miles of driving, there's one person is killed, 3 people suffer broken bones, 8 people suffer fender benders and bad memories, and 20 people suffer just bad memories because the car almost had an accident. Let's just say, right? So you have these various harms, from the maximum harm of death to significant harm of broken bones, down to nebulous harms of psychological bad memories. Can you attach a value, a numerical value to each of those? So, for example, if death is 100 points of harm, how many points is a broken leg? 20. How many points is a fender bender? 2. I'm not sure, but if we're going to make decisions, rational and debatable decisions about whether or not we are going to allow driverless cars to motor around, maybe not New York City, but places like Phoenix or San Francisco, where the streets tend to be wider, where the markings are clear, where you don't have as much chaos. If we're going to have that, we do need a way of drawing lines, of determining when the answer is yes and when the answer is no. And in order to do that, it seems like we're going to have to find some way to numerically represent what harms, how much harms count, in order to determine in some rigorous way how much harm we will accept in order to have the artificial intelligence work on the road. And it does seem like, at least comparatively, right? I guess we might say, there is one shortcut, right? We might say, look, as long as the AI outperforms human drivers in every way, there are fewer deaths, fewer broken bones, fewer traumatic fender benders, and so on. Maybe you could say in that case, then it doesn't matter what the measure is. If the AI is better than the human, then we can use it. But it still seems like we want to have some way of categorizing or ranking how safe various cars are, so we at least understand our choices. We will probably also want to find a way, as we go forward, of evaluating or ranking different cars' safety, or the one car company's safety against another. And in that case, it may be that one car company causes a high number of deaths, but no other damage, whereas the other car company causes very few deaths, but quite a few fender benders and so on. Well, we will want some numerical way of comparing those two things. So we will have to there attach some numerical value to a death and contrast that with the value of a fender bender. And that just takes us back to this frequency versus severity question, right? So if we have the Tesla has one death and nothing else for every 100 million miles, every 100,000 miles, and this other company has 70 fender benders for every 100,000 miles, but no deaths. At what point do the lines cross? At what point do you say, look, even though these are only fender benders, the frequency is getting so high that I'd prefer to have the one death than all of these fender benders. Or maybe fender benders too, a little bit too light. But let's say broken bones. I'd prefer to have one death instead of 1,000 or 100,000 broken bones. I'm not sure what the number would be, but that's what I'm asking here. I'm saying, how can you put those kinds of numbers onto, or strap those kinds of numbers onto the experience of a driverless car or maybe artificial intelligence in general, in order to give it a kind of safety score? And how can you do that in a way which goes beyond just saying, well, it's more safe than humans, which is a good start. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a criticism. I mean, for Tesla to say, look, our car causes less fatalities than human drivers, that's a powerful argument. But further on down the road, down the line, we are going to want to find some way to estimate, compare the kind of safety of one car against another. And that's where we will have to engage this severity versus frequency question that we're discussing. So here I'm saying, I think I'm being somewhat facetious, but here I'm saying, look, how many bad Netflix recommendations equals one Tesla autopilot fatality? Okay. Of course, there's no limit to that. Of course, if they're all bad, it's still better than the autopilot fatality. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, look, somewhere between the high frequency, less severe cases and the low frequency, high severe cases, the lines must cross in there somewhere. There must be some cases where in harms that humans suffer that are below, that are survivable, right? That are not death. But the frequency, we could at least imagine the frequency gets so great that we're better off having this 1 in a million deaths instead of this constant broken bones, let's say. Or maybe not. I mean, maybe you disagree with that. Maybe we're better off with 1 million deaths than one fatality. I'm not sure. Okay, so that's one way of talking about measuring safety and risk. Another way of, or another part of what I'm calling the dynamic for measuring safety and risk is not so much numerical, but conceptual. And so you can say, look, when we talk about what could go wrong with a car, maybe this whole talk about numbers and strapping on values to human experiences like broken bones and deaths, maybe you want to resist that. People who strongly advocate kind of a dignity approach to ethics tend to want to resist that commodification of human experience. They tend to want to resist the idea that we can measure human injuries and lives in the same way that we measure oranges and apples, how many there are, and so on. If you want to go that route, then maybe a different way of thinking about measuring safety or the dynamics of safety in artificial intelligence is to divide up the kinds of risks that we face if we let AI drive our cars. And here are 3 broad categories. There are the known risks. That is, we know about this kind of risk, and we know specifically what the risk is. So if you're driving in a car that's driven by a Tesla, you know that there's a risk that the car will come to a stop sign, not read the stop sign correctly, keep going, and end up getting smashed by a pickup truck or something, getting T-boned, as they say, and that will not be good for you, right? So that's a known risk, and we know that there's a risk, and we know that it involves the stop sign and the car not seeing the stop sign and going through and getting hit. Then there's the known unknown risk. That is, there are certain things that we don't know what's going to happen, but at least we know the parameters of the possibility. So, for example, when I'm driving down the street, another car may at any point go through that stop sign. I obey the stop sign correctly. I stop and then I go, but then another car does not obey the stop sign and hits me. Right? So that's not a known risk. It's just one of those things where I know that there's a risk, but I don't know exactly what form it's going to take at this precise moment. It could be that another car doesn't obey the stop sign. It could be the same thing, but that other car, its brakes don't work. It could be the same thing, but the other car, the driver has just had some health problem, and for that reason whizzes through the stop sign. So I know there's this general area of risk that the other car is going to go through the stop sign and hit me, but I don't know exactly what the particular risk is. In this case, it could be a health risk, distracted driver risk, a mechanical failure risk, who knows what. So that's a kind of second level of safety worry, right? The one safety worry is just the known, there's a stop sign, I misread it, and I cause an accident. Then I go through the stop sign correctly, but some strange thing happens at this intersection, and bang, I get hit. Then there's the unknown, right? The highest level risk is the kind of risk that occurs where you could not even foresee that possibility, right? All of us, as I say, all of us, when we approach an intersection, all of us are aware of the fact that it might be, even if it's our green light, there might be a car that comes through. So most of us will at least kind of take a quick look both ways before we go through. Same thing when you're walking across the crosswalk. But there's also the kind of risk that occurs where it would never even occur to you to think about that possibility. That's an unknown risk. It's not just that the risk itself is unknown, but you don't even know you have to worry about that general area of risk. And something like that maybe is the Tesla truck. I mean, it just did not occur to the person in the Tesla who was playing with his phone that his car would confuse a truck with a cloud. It just did not occur to him. And it would not have occurred to me either, right? If I was letting my Tesla drive me around, it would occur to me to think that the Tesla could get confused about which, especially in New York City, where frequently the lane dividing paint has been worn down to nothing. It would occur to me to think that my car might get confused and end up in the wrong lane going against traffic. I would definitely be aware of that. But it wouldn't occur to me to think that the car would confuse a truck with a cloud and just run a truck with a cloud and just run straight into it. So that's an unknown. And so here, you might want to think or kind of divide up the kinds of safety risks that exist into these kinds of categories. Of course, it's fairly easy to think about the known risk, right? You just see in 1 out of every 1 million times, the Tesla misreads the stop sign and goes. The known unknown, you can kind of estimate, right? You can say, look, in standard intersections, there are accidents once every 24 hours, and this is attributed to someone going through the stop sign or something. But the unknown, I'm not sure how you count that. I'm not sure how you weigh that risk. I mean, if we want to talk about safety and whether an AI is safe or not, how do we talk about that in the context of experiences where we can't even imagine that something is going to happen? How can we talk? Now, of course, now that we've seen the car go underneath the truck, now we can talk about it. Now we can imagine that happening. But before that, it just didn't occur to anybody. And the fact that the car went under the truck, and now we know that risk exists, that doesn't mean that we've found all the unknown risks. I think it's just the opposite. It reminds us that there's probably a lot of other unknown risks out there. We just haven't run into them yet, but we probably will run into some of them sometime. And I just hope that I'm not the one behind the wheel when that happens. So this question about the unknown, I think that solves some of the worries we might have about commodifying the human experience. Right? We say, look, that their artificial intelligence does project some of these kinds of risks like the truck, which are beyond our capacity to quantify. But on the other hand, if we can't quantify it, then how do we measure that kind of risk? I mean, how do we make decisions about artificial intelligence safety if we start talking about unknown risks? I mean, it begins to sound almost like mysticism or some kind of extra human realm of experience, because we're saying, look, there's this unknown risk, but we don't know, definitionally, we don't know what it is. So, as I say, to kind of wrap this up, when we talk about risk, we can go for a sort of mathematical approach. We can say, look, we're just going to strap numbers on everything, whether it's death, whether it's broken bones, what have you. We're going to talk about the frequency, give that a number, once every 100,000 miles. We're going to talk about the severity, give that a number, 100 for death, 20 for broken bones, etc. And that works to quantify and give you a way of comparing, let's say, the Tesla autopilot versus another company's autopilot, or compare the safety of an AI driver versus a human driver. Works. But it does reduce humans to numbers. And so if you want to escape that, you can take this other approach. You can talk about the unknown, which is really important in artificial intelligence. Right? There's stuff because the machine thinks differently than we do, as we discussed in the explainability section, because it thinks differently than we do. It's going to make mistakes which we could never conceive. So that makes sense. That takes us seriously as human beings. That respects our humanity and puts us face to face with this kind of terrible risk, fearsome risk. It seems to me that's the most sort of overwhelming risk that in human terms, that's the most overwhelming risk that AI presents. The possibility not that it will do something that we can predict, but the possibility that it will do something harmful that we never even imagined. That's the most human way, I believe, of thinking about AI risk and safety concerns. But we can't quantify it, right? We can't measure it. So it's not clear that helps us do anything out in the world. The unknown is very human, but it's not very helpful. So that's the way of talking about measuring AI safety risk. And here I'm saying something. I'm just making a point here in terms of frequently when people produce, not very frequently, it's customary when AI produces predictions. In essence, when it says the car says, I predict that we should go through this sign or not go through this sign, or predict we should go or not go. Typically, there are, at least in the inner workings, there are two kinds of predictions. There's the probability that what I see in front of me is a cloud or it's a truck. And then there's a second level of prediction, which is the confidence level you have in that prediction. So let's say you have a 90% level of confidence that it is 99% certain that that's a cloud and not a truck. Now, what that means is that the AI is fairly certain within the parameters of its experience that that is a cloud and not a truck. But the AI concedes, and I'm humanizing the AI now. I don't like to do that, but I'm just doing that now. The AI concedes that there is a 5% area of probability where it just has no idea what's going on. So when you say a 95% level of confidence and a 99% prediction within that level of confidence, that means that the machine is very, very confident about what's happening within the parameters of that 95%, but it insists there is this possibility also that just something completely crazy is happening. So what would be a difference there? If you're talking about an artificial intelligence that is predicting what move to make in a chess game or a checkers game, the level of confidence is going to be very high. Why? Because, or it should be if it's a good AI, because the system is a closed system. In checkers and chess, it never rains. There are no trucks, right? There's just the board, there's the pieces, and that's it. There are no unexpected factors that come in. And if a lightning bolt strikes the table, then what happens is you just stop playing. That's not part of the game. But by contrast, when a car is making the same decision, just like the chess computer AI will tell you, take the pawn or take the queen, so too the AI driver has to say, go through the intersection or take a left. The difference is when that happens with a car, a lightning bolt might occur, even if the sky is perfectly clear. It might happen that somehow, due to some strange atmospheric disturbance, a lightning strike comes in and hits right in front of the car in the intersection and ends up just confusing everyone and causing an accident. So in the area of chess and checkers and things like that, and Madden football or whatever else you might be using AI for, in those kinds of games, when you have a very closed environment, you have a very limited number of things that could come in that are unexpected or maybe even none. I mean, with chess and checkers, the only unexpected things there's still known unknowns, right? It's an unexpected move, maybe. I'm surprised that you left your queen exposed. That's surprising, but it's a known unknown. You know that that kind of craziness does happen in chess and checkers. People make bad moves, but there are no unknown unknowns. Or I don't think there are any unknown unknowns in chess and checkers, right? If a lightning bolt comes down and strikes the board, you just stop playing. It's not part of the game. Whereas by contrast, again, when you're driving the car, the lightning bolt is part of the driving. It's part of the game. And everything is part of the game. So that's why when you're driving, there are all these unknown unknowns. And that's what I'm getting at here when I talk about probability plus confidence, that those are really two different levels of experience. As long as nothing goes completely crazy, you have a certain confidence in your prediction. Should I go through the intersection or not? But there's also this consideration, and can be an attempt to measure, well, what are the probabilities that things are just going to go off the rails? Things are going to go crazy in ways I could not have imagined. And then just definitionally, if they're going to go off in ways you can't imagine, I don't know how you can measure that. It doesn't seem like you can to me. So you can think about that distinction a little bit, that distinction between the confidence in a prediction and in the prediction itself, and then the confidence of the prediction. So the confidence in the prediction and of the prediction. So I'm 99% sure that we should go through the intersection, but I'm only 95% sure that my whole way of thinking is making sense right now. Whereas, as I say, in chess and checkers, and it should be 99 or 100% certain that there's a 95% chance that you should take the queen or not. Okay, so you can think about that conceptually, that difference for a little bit. That's very much at the heart of what we're talking about now in safety. And just a lot of it comes back to that known unknown thing. Okay, so safety strategies. The ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI from Europe does a pretty good job of circumscribing the basic, what are at the moment the basic ways of responding to the basic or common safety threats that AI proposes. And what the EC guidelines focus on are fallback systems. That is basically human beings taking control when things go off the rails. That's the strategy that Tesla has, right? Tesla says that, at least in their rules, they say that as the human in the car, you are supposed to keep your hands on the wheel even when the car is driving itself. And the reason for that is that the human is the fallback system. When the AI starts doing something crazy, like coming up on a truck and not slowing down, then the human should intercede and start pumping the brakes. So the fallback system is when the AI fails, the human steps in. And then in that, within that way of thinking about the world, there's the idea of the human in the loop and the human on the loop. The difference is this. The loop means, in this case, the AI functioning. The human in the loop means that the artificial intelligence doesn't even go without or at least the effects. The artificial intelligence, I think, is not activated without the human participation at every moment. So, for example, a good example of that would be the use of artificial intelligence in the diagnosis of skin cancer. The doctor is in the loop because the doctor perhaps looks at the lesion and says, well, we should have AI take a look at this. So the doctor starts the AI. Then the AI doesn't come to a conclusion and then send the person for surgery or something. No, the AI comes to a conclusion and then the doctor looks at it again, right? So the doctor is in the loop. Everything the AI does, the doctor has already checked it off to start the machine. And the doctor at every step along the way is monitoring or okaying the machine and then moving to the next step. So in the end, it might be that the artificial intelligence, in essence, sends a patient to surgery for skin cancer, in essence. But nevertheless, the doctor was in the loop because the doctor was controlling the AI completely along the entire process. On the loop is a little bit different. That's like the Tesla. The AI is taking care of things on its own, but the human is overseeing it, watching it, so the AI can the human can intercede at any moment. That's what it means to be on the loop. And then other safety, important safety considerations are protections against hacking. Of course, all of us have gotten bad emails and can imagine other things, and accounting for unintended uses. So if you're making an artificial intelligence, let's say, to serve ads for individual. Actually, let me use a different example. You're using artificial intelligence again in the medical field to help diagnose skin cancer. Well, it might be that the information that you glean from that may help you. Actually, let me use it. I have a different example. Which I just saw yesterday, which I thought was a good example. So I'm glad I could use it. Something like Spotify, they want to get your musical interests so that they can provide you with recommendations for songs and music that you will like, even though you don't know about it yet. But also, as it turns out, there is a high correspondence between the kind of music people like and all kinds of personal things, like their sexual orientation and so on. So maybe the Spotify software that is intended to produce a prediction about what kind of music a listener likes, that could be twisted in unintended use to produce a prediction about the sexual orientation of that listener. Then that information could be used for, we could imagine that information could be used for nefarious purposes of one kind or another. So that would be an example of the AI being a safety risk arising from the AI being subjected to an unintended use. So that's some of the points that are gathered in the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. It's a good chapter of that publication. And then here are a couple of quick sort of case studies. One is we've talked about this briefly in the military. Typically, up to now, the use of artificial intelligence with respect to serious military weapons has been constrained to having humans in the loop. That is, we've been using artificial intelligence with respect to, let's say, the launching of nuclear weapons, only with humans guarding the process step by step along the way. But what is going on now is that this general, and this slide is a quote from a general, the general in charge of the U.S. defense against incoming missiles and air-based attacks. He says he wants to automate detection systems because, as he says the military needs to move at the speed of relevance, okay, which means react to incoming threats as quickly as necessary. And in order to do that, what he is saying is that we might have to switch from humans triggering the AI to AI just going on their own and humans watching and trying to intercede if things seem to be going off the rails. And the reason for that is, he says, look, there are these new weapons by the adversaries of the United States, which are creating incoming threats, which are much more rapid. So these are, for example, incoming missiles, which are supersonic, which are going very fast. Perhaps he is saying these missiles are coming so fast toward the United States that there simply is no time for human thinking, right? I mean, by the time the human figures out, should we try to intercept these missiles or not, or should we fire back or not, whatever decision is made, by the time that decision is made by a human, it's already too late. So as technology advances, in this case, he's worried about incoming missiles coming with increasing speed, the defenses that are driven by artificial intelligence to be functional are going to increasingly need to act without human intervention because you and I are just too slow. We think about it. There's not time to think when it's coming that fast. So, and this is, of course, obviously perfectly reasonable that that's what he's in charge of. He's in charge of missile defense. And if humans cannot provide defense and AI can, well, then, of course, you use the artificial intelligence. But there's a problem here, right? That's the safety problem. On the one hand, if we knew that the AI worked perfectly and that it only would fire our missiles in the case that other missiles were coming toward us, in that case, well, then it would be fine to have the artificial intelligence in charge. But there's this other risk that the artificial intelligence will erroneously fire missiles. So now we have a double risk. We have the risk that on the one side, the United States will suffer an attack and not be able to respond because we don't have AI and humans are too slow. We can get rid of that risk by implementing the artificial intelligence. But what happens if in that case, this new risk pops up, which is that our AI will fire missiles when they should not be fired. And either way, the result is destruction because everyone ends up shooting nuclear missiles at each other. That's obviously not a joke. We hope that doesn't happen. But there are these two kinds of risks, and it's very hard to know which one is greater. Is the risk greater to be vulnerable to the attack of some other side, or is the risk greater that our own defenses will malfunction and attack, and in essence cause then a counterattack and come to the same unhappy end? So here's a case where a proposal is being made to use artificial intelligence, put humans on the loop instead of in the loop, which means move humans further away from the center of decision making. The proposal makes perfect sense. It's absolutely reasonable response to the reality that humans can't decide in time, but it does not eliminate the need to ask the safety question. The safety question is, does this change, moving humans from in the loop to on the loop, does this change overall create more safety? It might, but it might not. And that's the kind of measure that you are involved in this area with artificial intelligence. That it will, in some cases, it will protect the United States against incoming missiles. But in other cases, like the Tesla, right, if there's this, for some reason, the AI does something crazy, well, we have to evaluate that as part of the safety consideration too. Okay. And so on the one hand, there's this question that AI does. What I'm trying to say here is that AI will create safety in some areas, certainly, but at the same time, frequently it will create new sources of unsafety, of lack of safety, and so you have to kind of measure those two against them. Another safety strategy or another safety concern is this question about sabotage, and this is kind of a classic case. And this is called an adversarial attack. It is disturbingly easy, as the headline says. I'm not sure where this came from one of the technical magazines, online magazines. Adversarial attacks can mess with self-driving cars, medicine, and the military. Okay, so here's a simple example. A driverless car will see the stop sign, read it correctly, and stop. But what people have shown is that by lacing that image with some, these are called perturbations, with an image on top of the stop sign, which is invisible to human eyes. And it's not like this perturbation is what the car sees or what the human sees. The human sees the same thing. It sees the stop sign in both cases. But this perturbation is actually much lighter than that. It's just little dots here and there. But if they're strategically placed, then a sign that looks like a yield sign to the human, a stop sign to the human, will be read differently by the car as a yield sign, so the car will just keep going and perhaps cause an accident. So this is a kind of, it's called adversarial perturbation. It means it's a kind of attempt to sabotage the way the AI works, and it's disturbingly easy to trick AI into doing something deadly. That is by projecting these kinds of little colors onto the stop sign. It might be possible to easily confuse the artificial intelligence Tesla and cause an accident. And if it can mix up the Tesla and cause an accident, which is bad, but it's just one car accident, that's a lot worse there, right? If you can easily mix up the United States nuclear military defense with some kind of perturbation, maybe a sonic perturbation, a set of sounds that you send into the air, which human beings would just think of as nothing, but would confuse a sonic sensor into thinking a missile was coming. Or again, maybe some kind of visual thing, which a human would dismiss immediately, but which might confuse an artificial intelligence. Obviously, if it sets off a nuclear war, well, that's bad. So there's this question about safety strategies and what we need to take account of. And it seems like there are quite a few things that need to be taken account of when we think about artificial intelligence and safety. We need to take account of, on the one side, I'm saying the risks of harm that AI creates, even while it is solving other problems, and then the risks that exist because the AI is being used. And we don't have time to go through all those risks, but one glaring example is this idea of sabotage through these kinds of perturbations. So in the area of safety, those are some of the considerations that need to be held in mind when managing the deployment and the development of artificial intelligence systems. Okay, so now we are into the last segment of our discussion, and we'll talk about the philosophies of innovation and safety. Well, what we've done so far is we have talked about the human experience of safety and what it feels like. We've talked about the idea of measuring safety and putting numbers onto things and trying to determine what is safe and what isn't. We've talked about some of the strategies for having safety and some of the ways that bad actors might create unsafe situations with artificial intelligence. All these things are very practical. Now I want to talk just a little bit theoretically about a question of safety. And basically the question is, should we slow down or speed up? In other words, it's true that artificial intelligence causes safety problems. That is simply undeniable. We've seen that with the Tesla car that drove underneath the truck. We see that with the AI used in the military to detect and counter incoming missiles. Now, of course, it may be that the use of the AI is safer than not using the AI. Of course, that's true. But it nevertheless is the case that where AI is used very frequently, maybe not so much in Netflix, but very frequently in serious areas, it does create risks. So something like this, here's another example of these. This is something, there's a lot of YouTube videos on this. They're kind of fun to see how you can confuse an artificial intelligence. They take the picture of the banana and they show how the artificial intelligence classifies this as a banana, and they put some other things next to the banana, and the AI says, I don't care. Still a banana. It's a banana. It's a banana. Then they put this weird thing here. It's not clear exactly what that colorful display is, but for some reason that causes the AI to determine that this whole thing is a toaster, and that's called an adversarial patch, or it's an adversarial image, right? Which just confuses the image reading, classifying powers of the artificial intelligence, and it does it here. It's just a funny thing. The question is, what can be done about this? And there are basically two strategies. One strategy is, well, if the AI is getting confused, what we should do is slow down our use and development of these machines until we can be sure that they can be used confidently and they won't make these silly mistakes. That makes a lot of sense, perfectly reasonable. The other, and equally sensible and reasonable approach to this is to say, no, it's not that. Instead of slowing down our artificial intelligence so that it doesn't make these mistakes, instead we should speed up our innovation. And once we discover that these kinds of mistakes exist, use the same innovative powers the same kind of engineering and the same drive to make AI work better to solve the safety problem. So in other words, if you see that the AI is misclassifying things, you can say, you know what? Maybe we should stop using artificial intelligence to make decisions about what it sees out in the world. That would be slowing down. Or you could say, equally validly, maybe we should redouble our efforts, use the same tools we used before to recognize a banana in some cases, to make sure we recognize the banana in every case. So in the first case, innovation is causing problems, so we slow down innovation. In the second case, innovation is causing problems, so we speed up innovation. Those are, in broad strokes, the two ways of responding to safety in concerns in artificial intelligence. And we can think of those as the slowing down path in the United States that frequently is associated with a group of people who promote the idea of slow AI. In Europe, that idea associates with people who promote the idea of precaution. There is a movement called effective altruism, which also takes that stand. It says, look, we should, and then there's a group called Less Wrong, which promotes that. It takes the stand that the best way, in essence, the best way to have safety in the long term is to put the brakes on innovation. On the other side, there's the idea of acceleration, artificial intelligence ethics, genhumanism, transhumanism under certain definitions. There's the idea of techno-optimism. There's the idea of effective accelerationism. There's the idea of post-humanism. All of these movements are very different in a number of ways, but on that fundamental division or question about innovation and safety, they do take a side. On one side, there's the various groups who say, look, safety allows innovation in AI. If we have too much innovation without considering safety, we're going to have a disaster. So over the long term, what we should do is slow innovation down in order to ensure safety, and that will ensure progress, which is slow, regular, and controlled. And in the medium and long term, the result will be more innovation because we're getting there safely. We're not going to have a nuclear war caused by AI. If you want to stop innovation, that's one way to stop it. A global nuclear war will stop innovation very quickly. And so if we're not careful, the argument is on this side. If we don't slow down, we might end up with innovation that causes a nuclear war, and that will be the end of innovation. On the other side, there's the pro-innovation side, and they say, look, innovation creates safety. And the argument there is, it's true that artificial intelligence is causing these risks, but we should double our speed, pedal to the metal, so to speak, accelerate more innovation so that we quickly solve these safety problems and avoid or radically diminish the possibility that AI will confuse a banana with a toaster, or that artificial intelligence will trigger a nuclear war. So there is no absolute way to determine which of those sides is preferable until maybe it's too late, right? And if we slow artificial intelligence down and nothing happens, that's good, but we don't have any way of knowing what would have happened, what advances have been lost had we sped up along the whole process and done so safely because innovation solved safety problems. Then, we might follow the slow AI route, but we will never know whether that was the right route to go or not. Similarly, on the other side, we can accelerate artificial intelligence, and if it works out that in 100 years everything is fine, that was probably the right decision. However, if we get a nuclear war between then and now, well, then it was probably the wrong decision. I mean, if we get a nuclear war that was caused by AI innovation, by saying, look, we're going to have artificial intelligence make the decision for us about shooting missiles, and that ends up causing a nuclear war that ends everything, well, in that case, we can probably say that we should have slowed down. But by the time we find that out, it's obviously too late. We've had the nuclear war. So you can't know beforehand. I guess that's a better way to say it. You can't know beforehand which way you should go. So this is very much of a theoretical discussion. And again, the basic theoretical discussion is, does safety allow innovation, or does innovation create safety? Or stated slightly differently, do we want to say that innovation will solve innovation problems? If we do want to say that, then we probably want to accelerate the development and deployment of artificial intelligence. We want to find problems, solve them, and keep going. On the contrast, if we don't believe that innovation itself is fully capable of solving innovation problems, then we probably want to slow innovation down, allow other kinds of factors to intercede, like human judgment more aggressively, to limit the uses of AI, and therefore create or diminish the chance of cataclysmic disaster. That's the theory. Of course, the reality, going back to the general, the good point the general makes is, well, all the theory sounds nice, but there's no choice, because some people are going faster, and if they're going faster, then we have to go faster. I think we see something similar with respect to the large language models now developed by OpenAI, Google, Facebook. You could say, let's imagine that you work at OpenAI, and there are people who work there who did say that, look, this technology is moving forward too quickly. This innovation is advancing too rapidly. We haven't fully taken account of the safety risks, and so therefore we should slow the innovation down. That's slow AI. That's precaution. Makes perfect sense. But there's a double argument against that. The one argument is that, well, innovation will solve innovation problems. I've talked about that. But the other argument, the practical argument is, well, maybe OpenAI will slow down, but Facebook won't slow down. Google won't slow down. Some companies in China won't slow down. So it doesn't do any good to slow down, since no one else will. So there is, within the theoretical, there's a theoretical debate here about whether innovation creates safety or safety creates innovation. There's a theoretical debate, but underneath that, there's also just the practical reality. It's hard to get everyone to slow down. Now, it might be possible to do that. And if it is, it's certainly worth considering. But it also might be quite difficult. And if it is quite difficult to get people to slow down, to get those who are developing and deploying artificial intelligence to stop using them for nuclear weapons and things like that, then the only practical choice might be to embrace the innovation side and accelerate innovation in order to solve problems before they create safety risks, which are cataclysmic. It's hard to know. This is just very quickly, this is to give you an idea of what the kind of philosophy of this question looks like. If you are going to promote the idea of innovation and the idea that innovation solves innovation problems, then you will start with that idea, that premise, and you can create a set of values underneath that to hold that premise up. One would be that innovation is intrinsically valuable. If you say that innovation is intrinsically valuable, then you are tipping the burden of justification to the other side. In other words, anytime you have innovation, you do have a tension between innovation and safety. The innovation is good. In some sense, it helps us do things, solves problems. That's why we call it innovation. But just like we've seen in case after case that we've looked at today, innovations do cause problems. Now, the question about justification is, which side, the side who is worried about the problems or the side that's worried about the innovation, which side has to prove their case? Is it the people who do innovation have to prove that their innovations are worth more than the safety risks, are more persuasive and worth pursuing despite the safety risks? Or is it the safety risk people who have to say, look, despite what the innovation could do, the safety concerns are too great and we should slow down? Now, that's a really important question. Which side has to prove their case? Because it's much harder, right? It's much harder to prove your case against someone else than to defend your case against the proof that they are making toward you, or at least in many cases it is. right? So, and of course, in many cases, it's a blurry area. It's gray. Uh, we don't know for sure in the case, for example, of the AI and the general and the weapons. Uh, we just don't know which one is which side creates the most safety. It's true that putting AI in charge of nuclear weapons creates risks, no doubt, no doubt. But maybe those risks are not as great as the risk that rises if we don't put nuclear weapons underneath the control of artificial intelligence. It's gray. We don't know. So in that case, if one side has to prove to the other, the side that has the burden of proof is probably going to lose. Right? So you really can't prove it one way or the other. And you say that the safety side has the burden of proof, well, then innovation probably is going to win that discussion. So if you say that innovation is intrinsically valuable, it's worth having on its own, it's an ethical value in itself, then that means that those who are against innovation and in favor of safety, they're going to have to, or at least that implies that they're going to have to take significant steps toward proving their case. Maybe they can say, well, safety is an intrinsic value too, so now the ball goes back to your court. But at least there's some back and forth there about who has to prove who has the burden of proof when we are deciding in any particular case whether an innovation is creating more safety or is creating less safety. And if you say that innovation is intrinsically valuable, that helps to tip the burden, because innovation is good in and of itself, it's worth having. That helps to tip the burden toward the safety side. I think you could say something also similarly about uncertainty. The idea that uncertainty is encouraging. Innovation always creates uncertainty. We don't know what will happen. And then there's the, in some sense, an ethical question about how we respond to uncertainty. Is uncertainty good, positive, energizing, or is it frightening, debilitating, negative? It's unclear. Different people, just as human beings, have different reactions to that. If you see something, you don't know what it is. Some people embrace that. They say, look, I think there's something, I like confronting what is unknown. And I want to find out what's there. Whereas other people in the same situation will say, if I see something that is unknown that I can't control, then I am resistant. I am hesitant. Maybe I'm not afraid, but I don't want to just embrace that kind of experience where I don't know what's going to happen. I'd rather take a step back. I think that promoting innovation as solving innovation's problems is tied up with the idea that uncertainty, since innovation is always going to cause some uncertainty, is tied up with the idea that uncertainty is encouraging, by which I mean it gives courage. It makes you want to do something, as opposed to makes you want to hesitate. And there's ideas of decentralization and embedding. I think those are getting to be quite specialized, though, so we will not go into those. But in general, I think what this helps to do is show that there is a kind of philosophical bulwark that you can set up for the idea of acceleration, for the idea that innovation will solve innovation's problems. So when we think about things like the nuclear war, we think, okay, we will implement artificial intelligence to control missiles in this way, but we must use that same innovative energy to also make sure that missiles do not fire mistakenly. And then similarly here, we will innovate to create driverless cars and let them work on the road, but we must not stop our innovation when we recognize the stop sign. We must push that innovation forward to make sure it also defeats the adversarial perturbations. So in the face of these risks, the positive stand toward innovation says innovation will solve the problems. Now, as I say, you can just as easily go the other way. And with this, we'll end. It's perfectly reasonable to take the stand on the other side. As I say here, these are philosophies, not philosophy, of innovation and safety. And the slow AI movement in the US and the idea of precaution, the precautionists in Europe, this makes perfect sense. It's perfectly reasonable to say, look, the risks that are being developed inside the deployment of artificial intelligence systems are, to some sense, unknown unknowns. And the reasonable response to that kind of risk is to slow down the innovation and therefore limit the kinds of risks that arise and control those risks with other tools, not artificial intelligence tools, but more conventional human tools, laws, regulations, and so on. So you can take your choice. There's no doubt that AI creates safety problems. You can either decide that more innovation will solve those problems that come from innovation, or you can say that there should be less innovation and therefore less problems. Either way, what we are talking about is the ethics of safety in artificial intelligence.